Hi all, and welcome back to our weekly overview and review of the cryptocurrency markets on behalf of Apex Signals. I hope you've all had a good week. Unfortunately, it hasn't been a fantastic week for cryptocurrencies. We were talking last week about how the market had a little bit of a lack of depth and momentum, and it was looking like a struggle to break back into a bull trend, and we've unfortunately seen that come to pass over the last week. We can see here on the chart of overall market cap, that's across all the significant cryptocurrencies, and we started last week. When we were speaking last week, we were just above the 300 billion level, and that dropped over the end of last week down to a Sunday low of around 244 billion, and we had a little bit of a recovery at the beginning of this week, especially on Tuesday, where there was a little bit of a rally, but this morning and into lunchtime and the early afternoon markets have tanked again, and we saw 7 billion loss over just about half an hour earlier today. So that wasn't fantastic. We're currently down around 264 billion. So that's roughly 40 billion down on where we were last week. There hasn't been any major news or developments which have sparked this recent slide. We had Twitter also coming out and saying that they were also banning or limiting cryptocurrency and ICO advertisements, but I don't think that's had a major impact. I'm not even sure if it was before, maybe slightly after. Last week, it was probably before we spoke last week, that news actually came out, and I think against the backdrop of Facebook and Google and so on, that's not a major driver at this point. It's simply the lack of overall momentum in the market which is causing this, and we spoke at some length last time about how the charts are looking like we might be in for a couple of months at least of a bear market. And then of course there was always going to be a correction this year, or almost certainly after the heat and froth leading up to the end of last year. The question was always what extent that downward turn would or to what extent that downward turn would lead to. And I think we've seen now that the chances are it's going to continue for a little bit longer. Again, like I said last week, I genuinely hope I'm wrong on that, but it is looking that way at the moment. If we have a quick look at the Bitcoin chart here, there we go. We can see here that we're down at around the 7,000 level at the moment. On Sunday we hit a low of just over 6,500, and we haven't gone back down to as low as that. But we'll see what happens over the next couple of days, if we can find some support down there, and that's around 1,000 down from where we were last week at about $7,500. And all the major cryptocurrencies have really been affected. We can have a look here at Ripple, which of course has had the hardest start of the year of any of the major cryptocurrencies, and that's despite the fact that numerous very optimistic looking agreements have been signed with different partners within the finance world. And we're down to around 50 cents today with Ripple. It lost 8% earlier today, which was obviously a bit of a tank, and the big cryptocurrency that's actually suffered the most is Litecoin, and that dropped by about 9.4% today, and that's down at 121.74, at least it was about half an hour ago. So it's pretty much across the board. There are not really any survivors or outliers among the big cryptocurrencies today. And again, I really think that the there's not a one root cause at the moment. There's not any big event that's triggered this. It's the accumulation of the regulatory crackdown and the little bit of pause that the market's having while regulators around the world look to come out with a workable structure for cryptocurrencies and ICOs, and also the fact that a lot of the potential publicity avenues have been cut off over the last little while, from Google to Facebook and now Twitter, is making it much more difficult for the cryptocurrency market to be in the public eye. Although general news is obviously not affected, it's more investment offerings, and I think what we have to do is simply hold tight here. It's going to pan out over the next 2 or 3 months. I think all of us here, as if you're watching this, you're probably long-term optimistic on the market. I am too, and I think like any financial market, there's always bear periods, and sometimes those are healthy. They help to stabilize things and create a more solid foundation for further upward trajectory in the future. One interesting thing that has started to become apparent over the last few weeks especially, and this year really, is that while last year there was a lot of talk of cryptocurrency markets being anti-correlated to traditional financial markets, so the stock exchange, commodity markets and so on, we're actually starting to see a very different pattern at the moment, and especially today, and over the last week, we've seen fairly tight correlation between cryptocurrency markets and the stock exchange. So most of you are probably aware that we've had a bit of a major correction within the stock exchange as well, and the S&P 500 had its worst quarter in 9 over the first 3 months of this year, and this morning, for example, or yesterday, and showing again in the futures this morning, tech stocks have taken another hammering, and that's pulled down markets overall, and that's being seen to be replicated within cryptocurrency markets. And one theory around that is that as cryptocurrency markets become more mature, and also those the profile of those investing in cryptocurrency markets becomes more mature as well, then they're starting to behave a lot more in a very similar way to risk assets. And of course, cryptocurrencies very much are a risk asset, just like the stock exchanges, and the global feeling at the moment is to move away from risk assets into things like bonds and fixed income assets, which is a natural pattern as markets move into a correction or a bear market. So it'll be interesting to keep an eye on that and see over the next few months whether this pattern of correlation between risk on traditional financial markets and cryptocurrency markets continues, and whether we're going to see a new status of tight correlation there. Okay, that's pretty much all we have time for today. Thanks for popping in again, and let's see what's happening next week. Hopefully we won't have seen too steep a loss. We might have even seen a bit of a recovery. We keep seeing that every time we have a drop, there is support there. So if we do continue to have a downward trend over the next couple of months, hopefully it will be in a controlled fashion. So we'll check in again next week and see how things are going, and in the meanwhile, happy trading, and enjoy the week. Bye for now.